The sensor array picked up the incoming fleet 3 days before they arrived. Rebecca Hayes watched the data stream across her screens while eating a protein bar that tasted like cardboard. 50 human ships scattered across 4 solar systems received the same information at the exact same moment. Something big was coming, and it wanted everyone to know. The Dominion Empire broadcast their message on every frequency humanity used. Supreme Commander Ralthan appeared on every screen across human space, his reptilian features twisted into what his species probably thought looked authoritative. He spoke in perfectly translated English, which meant they had been watching humanity for a while. Primitive species of Earth, you have expanded beyond your assigned boundaries. The Dominion Empire has governed this sector for 10,000 years. You will dismantle your military vessels, surrender all weapons technology, and accept our guidance. You have 72 hours to transmit your acceptance. Failure to comply will result in correction. The transmission ended. Hayes finished her protein bar and pulled up the tactical display. 300 Dominion warships hung at the edge of the Sol system like a metal storm waiting to break. Every single one outmassed human vessels by a factor of 3. Their weapons' signatures read hot enough to crack planets. This was the largest invasion force the Dominion had ever assembled for a single species. Hayes opened a channel to Earth's Unified Defense Council. Faces appeared on her screen, some panicking, others grim, a few trying to look brave. Minister Chen spoke first. "Admiral, our analysis suggests resistance would be suicide. 300 against 50. Perhaps we should negotiate." "We are negotiating," Hayes said, "just not the way they expect." She spent the next 6 hours in communication with every human ship commander, every colony defense coordinator, every military strategist humanity had. The plan formed piece by piece. It was risky. It was strange. It was the most human response possible. Hayes sent the reply herself. "Commander Ralthan, humanity acknowledges your message. Before we make any decisions, we would like to extend an invitation. Please bring your fleet to Mars orbit. We have something to show you that might inform your understanding of who you're threatening. Consider it a diplomatic gesture." The response took 12 minutes. Ralthan's face reappeared, confusion evident even across species barriers. "You wish to show us something. What possible demonstration could change the reality of your situation?" "Just context," Hayes said. "Come to Mars, you'll understand when you see it." The Dominion fleet moved toward Mars over the next 2 days. Hayes used that time to position every human ship in the solar system. They converged from mining operations in the asteroid belt, from patrol routes near Jupiter, from the shipyards orbiting Luna. 50 vessels formed a loose semicircle in Mars orbit, not a defensive formation, but something that looked almost like an amphitheater. When the Dominion fleet arrived, Ralthan immediately demanded an explanation. "What is this arrangement? Where are your defensive positions?" Hayes appeared on his screen, sitting casually in her command chair. "No defense needed, Commander. We're just setting up viewing angles. Welcome to our demonstration. We wanted to show you what human warfare actually looks like before you commit to this course of action." "Your warfare," Ralthan's scales seemed to darken. "You mean your inevitable defeat?" "No," Hayes said, "I mean our history." The human ships began broadcasting. Not threats, not demands, just data. Raw historical information flooded toward every Dominion vessel. Earth's timeline of warfare stretched back 10,000 years, matching the entire span of Dominion imperial history. Except where the Dominion had perhaps 20 major conflicts in that time, humanity had hundreds. Thousands if you counted smaller wars. Images flashed across Dominion screens. Ancient battles with primitive weapons. Medieval sieges that lasted years. Naval warfare that spanned entire oceans. Aerial combat that turned skis into killing fields. Nuclear weapons that could end civilizations. Biological weapons that could erase species. Chemical weapons that turned battlefields into toxic wastelands. And then the critical information. Every single one of those weapons had been designed by humans to kill other humans. Every tactical doctrine had been tested against opponents who thought exactly like the people who created it. Every defensive theory had been broken by people who understood it perfectly because they invented it. Ralvin watched the data stream with growing unease. His tactical officers ran analyses and simulations. One of them spoke quietly. "Commander, their entire species history is warfare. We have records of peace for 80% of our existence. They have peace for less than 8% of theirs." "That makes them dangerous primitives," Ralvin said, but his voice carried uncertainty. Hayes continued speaking. "Commander, you need to understand something fundamental. You're not threatening a peaceful species with violence. You're threatening a species that has spent its entire existence perfecting violence against the most dangerous opponent we ever faced." "And what opponent is that?" Ralvin asked. "Ourselves," Hayes said. "Every weapon system you see on these ships was designed to kill other humans who knew we were coming. Our military doctrine assumes the enemy is exactly as intelligent, exactly as creative, and exactly as determined to survive as we are, because that's what we learned fighting each other." Ralvin pulled up his own species' history, 2,000 years since the last internal conflict. The Dominion had conquered through technological superiority over less advanced species. They had never faced an opponent who understood war the way they did. They had never needed to. "History is interesting," Ralvin said, trying to maintain authority. "But it changes nothing. We have superior numbers and superior technology. Surrender or be destroyed." Hayes smiled. It was not a friendly expression. "Superior technology, let's test that assumption. All human ships activate combat protocols." Across the Dominion fleet, sensor officers started shouting alerts. Every human vessel suddenly blazed with weapon signatures that made no sense. Their reactors were operating at 300% of what Dominion science said was theoretically possible. Their weapons were drawing more power than Dominion flagships. Ralvin's science officer spoke with barely controlled panic. "Sir, their power output is impossible. Our sensors must be malfunctioning." "They're not malfunctioning," Hayes said, her voice carrying clearly across the channel. "That's just what we designed to kill each other. Would you like to see what we made to fight aliens?" The tactical display lit up with weapon locks. Every human ship had acquired firing solutions on multiple Dominion targets. The numbers were impossible to ignore. Even with 6-to-1 numerical advantage, this was going to be bloody. Ralvin stared at the display and realized that the primitive species he had come to easily conquer had just made him afraid. For the first time in 300 years of military service, he genuinely feared he might lose. Hayes leaned forward. "So, Commander, shall we continue with your correction, or would you like to see what else we have to show you?" Ralvin's claws scraped against his command console. 300 warships under his control, and somehow this species of primitives had made him hesitate. He looked at the tactical projections his officers had generated. 60% casualties even with numerical superiority. 85% if the fighting moved near any human defensive installations. The Dominion had built an empire by never accepting losses above 10%. "You're bluffing," Ralvin said, but the words sounded hollow even to him. Hayes shook her head. "Commander, we're not bluffing. We're being honest. There's a difference. Let me show you something concrete. Choose any asteroid in the belt, anyone you want." Ralvin consulted with his science officer, then designated a large iron asteroid 5 kilometers in diameter. "That one." A single human destroyer broke formation. The vessel was tiny compared to Dominion warships, barely the size of their escort frigates. It rotated slowly, bringing its main weapon to bear. There was no visible discharge, no dramatic energy buildup that Dominion sensors could detect. The asteroid simply ceased to exist. One moment it was 5 kilometers of solid iron. The next moment it was an expanding cloud of superheated plasma radiating across every spectrum. Dominion sensors screamed warnings about thermal bloom and radiation spikes. The energy release was equivalent to a fusion bomb. "What did you use?" Ralvin demanded. "What weapon was that?" "Kinetic penetrator," Hayes said calmly. "Accelerated to 15% light speed. We developed them during the colonial expansion wars on Earth. They were designed to crack open fortified underground cities and hardened military bunkers. Each destroyer carries 200 of them." Ralvin did the math quickly. 50 human ships, 200 penetrators each, 10,000 planet-killing projectiles. His fleet's defensive screens could maybe stop half before they hit. Maybe. "The problem with fighting other humans," Hayes continued, "is that they know exactly what you're planning because they would plan the same thing. So we had to design weapons that couldn't be defended against. Overwhelming kinetic force was one solution. Would you like to see another?" Before Ralvin could respond, a different human ship demonstrated its plasma lance technology. 3 smaller asteroids became targets. The lances cut through solid rock like it was paper, maintaining coherence for 500,000 kilometers. These weren't area weapons. These were surgical instruments designed to defeat hardened defensive positions. Those were designed to take out bunker complexes during the water wars of 2156, Hayes explained. When both sides were fighting over Earth's remaining aquifers. You couldn't just destroy the bunkers because you would contaminate the water. You had to cut them open precisely and neutralize defenders without damaging infrastructure. Another ship activated its missile batteries. 50 missiles launched simultaneously, and they did things missiles should not be able to do. They curved in impossible directions. They split into smaller submunitions. They reformed. They dodged through simulated point defense fire with moves that violated basic physics. "Adaptive AI guidance," Hayes said. "Each missile has its own intelligence, capable of learning and adjusting in real time. We developed these to hunt other missiles and ships that knew they were being hunted. They've been fighting each other in simulations for 70 years. They learn faster than organic pilots." Ralvin felt something he had not experienced in decades: doubt. Real, fundamental doubt about the Empire's superiority. His tactical officer whispered urgently, "Sir, we should withdraw and reassess." "The Empire does not withdraw," Ralvin said, but his hearts were beating faster. Hayes seemed to sense his internal conflict. She opened a broadcast channel to every ship in both fleets, not just to Ralvin. "I want everyone to understand something. Every weapon you've seen today was designed by humans to kill humans who were just as smart, just as creative, and just as determined to survive as we are. We tested every defensive theory against people who thought exactly like we do." She paused, letting that sink in. "Your tactics, Commander Ralvin, your formations, your strategies, we've seen them all. We invented them, broke them, rebuilt them, and broke them again. For 10,000 years, we've been in an arms race with ourselves. You've had peace. We've had evolution through endless conflict." One of Ralvin's subordinate captains broke protocol and spoke directly. "If you're so powerful, why haven't you conquered other species?" "Because we learned something important fighting ourselves," Hayes said. "Conquest is expensive. Peace is profitable. We'd rather trade than fight. But that doesn't mean we've forgotten how to fight. It means we choose not to unless forced." Ralvin tried one final power play. "Your demonstrations are impressive, but we still outnumber you 6-1. Surrender or be destroyed." Hayes's expression didn't change. "Commander, you're not understanding. We're not trying to scare you into leaving. We're trying to save your lives by explaining why you should leave voluntarily. But if you insist on fighting, we'll show you what human warfare actually looks like when we stop being polite." She gave an order: "All ships activate combat drones." Ralvin's sensor displays exploded with new contacts. Each human ship carried 500 autonomous combat drones. 25,000 new signatures appeared across the tactical display in seconds. The numerical advantage had just reversed. The Dominion fleet was now outnumbered 5-1. How, Ralthan's science officer stammered, how did we not detect those? They were powered down, Hayes said. We didn't think we'd need them for a peaceful demonstration, but since you keep insisting on violence, here we are. The drones began moving in coordinated patterns. They formed swarms, each group moving with purpose and intelligence. Ralthan recognized the tactical formations, wolf pack hunting strategies, swarm coordination protocols. These weren't just weapons, they were a distributed intelligence network. After we achieved spaceflight, Hayes explained, we realized traditional fleet tactics were inadequate for three-dimensional combat, so we developed autonomous drone warfare. Then we spent 40 years fighting each other with drones to perfect the tactics. The drone wars of 2187 deployed 50 million autonomous units across Earth's orbit. Both sides learned hard lessons. Then we combined all that knowledge into these. Ralthan watched the tactical display and saw defeat. Not possible defeat. Actual, inevitable defeat. Even if the Dominion won through sheer sacrifice, the cost would cripple the Empire. Other species would see the casualties and rebel. The Empire's reputation for invincibility would shatter. These aren't even your current generation weapons, are they? Ralthan asked quietly. Hayes smiled again. No, Commander. These are 20 years old. We keep them around for situations exactly like this. Our actual frontline systems. Those we don't demonstrate unless we're actually fighting. Let's just say these drones are to modern human weapons what a wooden club is to a railgun. Ralthan's communication officer spoke urgently. Sir, incoming transmission from the Dominion homeworld. It's the High Council. They've been watching everything. Hayes's smile widened. Oh, did we mention we've been broadcasting this entire exchange to your capital? We thought they should see what their commander was walking into. The High Council's transmission took priority over all other communications. 5 ancient faces appeared on Ralthan's command screen, counselors who had ruled the Dominion Empire for longer than some species had existed. Chief Counselor Vorseth's expression was unreadable, which in Dominion culture meant extreme displeasure. Commander Ralthan, Vorseth said, his voice carrying the weight of 10,000 years of imperial authority. Do not engage the humans. Ralthan felt his scales flush with humiliation. The Council had never directly interfered with a military campaign in his lifetime. Counselor, they are primitives who refuse to submit. The Empire's honor demands. The Empire's survival demands wisdom, not honor, Vorseth interrupted. We have watched this entire exchange. We have consulted our historians, our strategists, our predictive algorithms. Commander, stand down immediately. Hayes watched the exchange with interest. She had gambled that broadcasting to the Dominion homeworld would force their leadership to make a rational decision divorced from the heat of confrontation. Apparently, it had worked. Vorseth turned his attention to Hayes. Admiral Hayes, the Dominion High Council wishes to speak with you directly. I'm listening, Counselor, Hayes said. We recognize what you have shown us today, Vorseth said. A species that has weaponized innovation itself. A culture that treats warfare as an evolving art form rather than a static doctrine. You have demonstrated capabilities that exceed our projections by significant margins. And therefore, Hayes prompted. Therefore, we acknowledge that conquering humanity would be Pyrrhic at best, catastrophic at worst, Vorseth said. But more importantly, we recognize something our commander apparently did not. You have been restraining yourselves. Hayes raised an eyebrow. Explain. You could have attacked immediately when our fleet entered your system, Vorseth said. Your weapons have sufficient range and power. Instead, you invited dialogue. You demonstrated your capabilities without causing casualties. You even gave Commander Ralthan multiple opportunities to withdraw with his honor intact. These are not the actions of a purely aggressive species. We learned the hard way that fighting is expensive, Hayes said. We'd rather avoid it when possible. Precisely, Vorsith said. Which brings me to our proposal. The Dominion wishes to withdraw our ultimatum and recognize human sovereignty over your current territorial claims. In exchange, we propose a mutual defense pact between our peoples. Hayes kept her expression neutral, but internally she was recalculating everything. You're offering an alliance to the primitives you came to conquer. We are offering pragmatism, Vorsith said. 10,000 years ago, the Dominion was much like humanity is now. Young, aggressive, constantly innovating through conflict. We survived not because we were the strongest, but because we learned when not to fight. There were 3 species in our early expansion that we chose not to engage. All 3 eventually destroyed themselves through internal warfare. We survived because we recognized when conquest would cost more than it could ever gain. And you think humanity might destroy ourselves? Hayes asked. No, Vorsith said. We think humanity has already passed that threshold. You developed world-ending weapons and chose to limit them. You created biological and chemical horrors and chose to ban them. You have the capacity for annihilation and the wisdom to restrain it. That combination is rare. Hayes considered the offer. What exactly would this mutual defense pact entail? Full partnership, Vorsith said. Not subjugation, not vassalage, equal standing. The galaxy is larger than the Dominion's controlled sector, Admiral. There are threats beyond our borders. The Hive collectives, the Nomad raiders, the Void entities. We have maintained power through technological superiority, but we have stagnated. Your aggressive innovation could be an asset rather than a threat. Hayes requested a brief recess to consult with Earth's government. Vorsith agreed to 12 hours. The Dominion fleet maintained position, while human leadership debated furiously across secured channels. Minister Chen was skeptical. This could be a trap. They attack once we lower our guard. If they wanted to attack, they would have done it already, Hayes countered. They're offering this because they've calculated that we're more valuable as allies than as conquered subjects. Another counselor spoke. What do we demand in return? Hayes had been thinking about that. Full technology exchange. No restrictions. If we're partners, we share everything. Also, military observers embedded with each other's forces. They learn from us, we learn from them. And most importantly, they publicly announce this as an alliance between equals, not as humanity joining their empire. The debate continued for 8 hours before Earth's leadership agreed. Hayes returned to the negotiation with humanity's counteroffer. She laid out the terms clearly, watching Vorsith's reaction. The ancient counselor was silent for a long moment. Full technology exchange is unprecedented in Dominion history. So is finding a species that could fight you to a mutual bloodbath, Hayes said. We both know we'll reverse engineer anything we see in combat anyway. This way we skip the inefficient parts and start cooperating immediately. Vorsith consulted with the other counselors briefly. We agree to your terms. The Treaty of Mars will mark a new era for the Dominion, an era of growth through alliance rather than conquest. Hayes nodded. Then we have an agreement. The formal announcement went out across galactic communication networks within an hour. The Dominion Empire and humanity had formed a mutual defense pact. Reactions across known space ranged from shock to disbelief. Species that had been conquered by the Dominion wondered what made humans different. Independent powers recalculated their strategic positions, knowing that human innovation was now backed by Dominion resources. Ralthan received orders to begin immediate coordination with human forces. His humiliation was complete, but as he reviewed the tactical data from the demonstration, he understood why the Council had made this decision. Fighting humans would have been possible. Winning would have been questionable. The cost would have been catastrophic. Hayes opened a private channel to him. "Commander, I know this isn't the outcome you expected." "I came to conquer primitives," Ralvin said bitterly. "Instead, I found warriors who taught my empire something we had forgotten." "What's that?" "That strength isn't just about weapons and numbers," Ralvin said. "It's about knowing when to fight and when to find a better path. Your species understands both. Perhaps that is why you survived your own violence." "Perhaps," Hayes said. "For what it's worth, Commander, you handled this better than many humans would have. You listened when your leadership showed wisdom." Ralvin appreciated the gesture. "What happens now?" "Now we learn from each other," Hayes said. "Your people have stability and long-term strategic thinking. My people have adaptation and innovation. Together we might actually—" Alarms sounded simultaneously on both flagships. New contacts appearing at the edge of the solar system. 50 vessels of completely alien design. Not Dominion. Not human. The sensor profile matched something from Dominion intelligence databases. "Hive scouts," Ralvin said, his voice tight. "They must have detected the energy signatures from your demonstrations." Hayes pulled up the tactical display. "Well, Commander, looks like we're about to test this new alliance sooner than expected." The Hive vessels moved with geometric precision that made human formations look chaotic by comparison. Perfect spacing, perfect timing, perfect coordination. They were biological ships grown rather than built. Technology and organic matter merged into something that could think and adapt. Hayes pulled up everything humanity knew about the Hive, which was not much. The Dominion had been fighting them for 3 centuries to a bloody stalemate. The Hive assimilated technology and biological matter, constantly evolving, constantly improving. They did not negotiate. They did not retreat unless the cost exceeded potential gain. They just consumed and grew. "Commander Ralvin, what are standard Hive tactics?" Hayes asked. Ralvin's display showed historical engagement data. They probe defenses first, analyzing weapon signatures and defensive capabilities. Then they adapt their biological armor and shields to counter what they've learned. Finally, they strike at identified weak points with overwhelming force. Every battle teaches them. Every loss makes them stronger for the next engagement. "So they're like us," Hayes said. "They learn from combat." "No," Ralvin corrected. "They are worse. Humans learn and adapt as individuals and organizations. The Hive learns as a unified consciousness. Every ship shares every experience instantly. They are one mind with many bodies." Hayes considered this. "Then we can't let them learn. We hit them with everything simultaneously before they can analyze and adapt." "That contradicts Dominion doctrine," Ralvin said. "We preserve our forces, accept longer engagements to minimize casualties." "Commander, this is exactly why humans wage war differently," Hayes said. "Sometimes the fastest way to win is to risk everything immediately. Overwhelming force applied before the enemy can respond." Ralvin hesitated. 3 centuries of military doctrine said to fight conservatively, to preserve the fleet, to accept tactical stalemates rather than strategic risks. But he had just watched humans demonstrate the flaw in that thinking. Conservative tactics against an enemy that learned and adapted just meant teaching them how to beat you slowly. "Agreed," Ralvin said. "Combined assault. What do you need from my fleet?" "Heavy weapons and targeting data," Hayes said. "Human ships will take point. We're faster and more maneuverable. You provide the massive firepower and your 3 centuries of intelligence on Hive defensive capabilities." Both fleets reorganized in under 10 minutes. Human ships formed the outer layer, quick and aggressive. Dominion vessels created the inner core, heavy and powerful. The 25,000 combat drones deployed in a sphere around the combined formation. Tactical data flowed between ships as humans and Dominion officers coordinated in real time. The Hive vessels continued their methodical approach, scanning both fleets. They were attempting to categorize threats and identify weaknesses. Their movements suggested confusion. Two separate fleet doctrines operating in coordination was something they had not encountered before. All ships, Hayes broadcast across both fleets. Fire everything, hold nothing back. The combined response was beautiful in its violence. Human kinetic penetrators launched at 15% light speed. Dominion plasma cannons fired in precisely coordinated volleys. Human missiles with adaptive AI streaked toward hive vessels on unpredictable paths. Dominion energy torpedoes followed targeting solutions provided by human sensor arrays. The hive responded by deploying defensive screens and biological armor plates. Their ships began adapting in real time, analyzing the incoming weapons and adjusting their defenses. Several hive vessels started phase shifting, their matter becoming partially intangible to avoid kinetic impacts. It was exactly what Hayes had expected. She activated a weapons system she had not shown Ralthan during the demonstration. All ships engage quantum displacement warheads. The human missiles suddenly shifted through multiple dimensions, bypassing normal space entirely. The hive phase shift defense, which worked by moving slightly out of phase with normal matter, was useless against weapons that could operate across dimensional boundaries. 12 hive vessels vaporized in the first volley. Ralthan saw the opening and exploited it immediately. All Dominion ships focus fire on vessels engaging phase shift protocols. Their shields drop for 0.03 seconds during the transition. Target those windows. Dominion gunnery crews, trained through centuries of warfare, hit those microsecond gaps with frightening precision. 8 more hive vessels died as plasma cannons burned through them during their vulnerable transition moments. The human drone swarms executed a maneuver the hive had never encountered. They separated into 500 smaller groups, each attacking from different vectors simultaneously. The hive vessels' defensive systems were sophisticated, but they could not track 500 separate threat streams. Drones began systematically destroying sensor arrays and weapons ports, degrading hive capabilities with each passing second. Within 8 minutes of the first shot, 30 hive vessels were destroyed or crippled. The remaining 20 attempted to withdraw, but human ships had been positioning to cut off retreat vectors since the engagement began. They had learned from studying Dominion tactical databases. Never let the hive escape to report what they learned. No survivors, Hayes said quietly. We can't let them share our tactics with the collective. The pursuit was brief and brutal. Human ships demonstrated acceleration and maneuverability that made Dominion vessels look sluggish. They herded hive ships into kill zones where Dominion heavy weapons waited. The combined firepower was overwhelming. 15 minutes after the first shot was fired, the last hive vessel was destroyed. Both fleets regrouped, assessing damage. Human losses were minimal. 3 destroyers damaged, 1 heavily, but 0 casualties thanks to automated damage control systems. Dominion losses were more severe. 1 cruiser destroyed with 200 crew lost, 2 ships moderately damaged. Hive losses were total. 50 vessels eliminated with no opportunity to transmit tactical data back to the collective. Ralthan opened a channel to Hayes. His voice carried something new, genuine respect. Admiral, in 300 years of fighting the hive, we have never achieved a victory this decisive. Our doctrine has been containment, not elimination. You've been fighting defensively, Hayes said, trying to minimize your losses, but defensive fighting against an enemy that learns just teaches them how to beat you. Sometimes you need to accept risks to achieve objectives. Your people learned this fighting each other, Ralthan asked. We learned it fighting everyone, Hayes said. Ourselves, our environment, our own limitations. Earth is a brutal teacher, Commander. Everything on our planet evolved to survive in competition with everything else. We brought that lesson to space with us. Ralthan reviewed the engagement data. The High Council will want complete tactical analysis. We'll share everything, Hayes said. That's what partners do. Besides, the Hive just learned something dangerous about this alliance, or they would have if any of them had survived to report it. What lesson is that? Ralvin asked. Hayes smiled. That humans and Dominion together are a threat the Hive can't ignore. They'll have to divert resources to deal with us. That helps every other species they're currently attacking. We just changed the strategic balance of this entire region of space. News of the engagement spread through galactic communication networks faster than light itself. The Hive, which had been expanding unchecked for 5 centuries, had suffered total defeat. Not a strategic withdrawal, not an acceptable loss ratio. Complete annihilation of a 50-ship scout force with 0 survivors to report back. Species across known space recalculated their strategic positions. The Dominion Empire, which had seemed stagnant and conservative, had suddenly demonstrated new tactical flexibility. Humanity, which most galactic powers had dismissed as irrelevant primitives, had revealed themselves as sophisticated warriors. The combination was terrifying to some, encouraging to others. On Earth, celebrations mixed with sober recognition of what humanity had just done. They had announced themselves as a major galactic power in the most violent way possible. Minister Chen addressed the Unified Defense Council with concern evident in his voice. "We've painted a target on ourselves," Chen said. "Every aggressive species in the galaxy now knows we're a threat." Hayes, attending the council meeting remotely from her flagship, nodded. "True, but every defensive species also knows we're potential allies. We've shifted from being targets to being partners worth courting." The Dominion High Council convened simultaneously on their homeworld. Chief Counselor Vorsith reviewed engagement data with his fellow counselors. The results were undeniable. Combined human-Dominion tactics had achieved what the Empire alone had failed to accomplish in 300 years. "The humans fight without our caution," one counselor observed. "They accept risks we would never tolerate. Because they learn to calculate acceptable losses fighting themselves," Vorsith said. "When your opponent is equally intelligent and equally resourceful, you cannot afford conservative tactics. You innovate or you die. Humanity innovated. And now we have access to that innovation," another counselor said. "The technology exchange begins immediately." "It does," Vorsith confirmed. "We will learn their weapons design philosophy. They will learn our long-term strategic planning. Both civilizations benefit." Back in the Sol system, the first technology exchange teams were already forming. Human engineers prepared to board Dominion vessels. Dominion scientists prepared to study human manufacturing techniques. Military observers from both sides arranged embedded positions with each other's fleets. Ralvin met Hayes in person for the first time 3 days after the battle. A diplomatic shuttle brought her to the Eternal Sovereign. They stood in the observation deck, watching mixed patrols of human and Dominion ships conducting joint maneuvers. "This is surreal," Ralvin admitted. "A week ago I came here to conquer you. Now we're coordinating patrol schedules." Hayes watched the ships moving in synchronized formations. "How does it feel, Commander, the shift from enemy to ally?" "Uncomfortable," Ralvin said honestly, "but correct. I reviewed our casualty projections from the Hive engagement. If my fleet had fought alone, we would have lost 8 ships minimum, possibly 15. Combined with your forces, we lost 1. The mathematics are undeniable." "Mathematics tell part of the story," Hayes said. "The other part is adaptation. Your people have been fighting the Hive the same way for 3 centuries. They adapted to your tactics completely. We brought something new that they hadn't learned to counter yet." "Until the next engagement," Ralvin said, "when they will have adapted to your quantum displacement weapons and drone swarm tactics." "Which is why we're already designing the next generation," Hayes said. "By the time the Hive adapts to what they saw, we'll have moved on to something else. That's the human approach. Never stop innovating. Never let the enemy catch up. Ralvin gestured at the observation window. And now the Dominion will learn this approach. You are teaching us to think like you. And you're teaching us to think strategically across centuries instead of decades, Hayes said. Humanity's biggest weakness is short-term thinking. We solve immediate problems brilliantly but sometimes miss long-term consequences. Your people plan for millennia. We need that perspective. A junior Dominion officer approached respectfully. Commander, the first joint patrol reports successful completion of their route. No incidents. Human and Dominion crews report positive cooperation. Good, Ralvin said. Expand the patrol schedule. I want mixed crews on 50% of all routes within a month. The officer hesitated. Sir, some of our personnel are uncomfortable serving with humans. They worry about cultural conflicts. Hayes spoke before Ralvin could respond. Send them to me. I'll arrange exchanges with human crews who are nervous about serving with Dominion personnel. Sometimes the best way to overcome discomfort is direct exposure. The officer nodded and left. Ralvin appreciated Hayes's practical approach. You handle personnel management like a military officer. I am a military officer, Hayes said. But I also understand that wars are fought by people, not just ships and weapons. If our crews don't trust each other, all the technology exchange in the galaxy won't matter. Agreed, Ralvin said, which is why I want to propose something. A joint training exercise, not just patrols. Full combat simulations with human and Dominion forces working together against hypothetical threats. What kind of threats? Hayes asked. Everything we can imagine, Ralvin said. Hive attacks, nomad raiders, void entity incursions, even scenarios where we face opponents with combined human-Dominion capabilities. We need to know our own weaknesses before someone else exploits them. Hayes considered this. You're thinking like a human, always preparing for the next fight. I'm thinking like someone who almost made a catastrophic mistake, Ralvin said. I came to your system expecting easy victory because I assumed technological superiority meant military superiority. I will not make that assumption again about anyone. That's a valuable lesson, Hayes said. How many of your fellow commanders have learned it? Not enough, Ralvin admitted. The Dominion has been dominant for so long that many of our officers have never faced a real challenge. This alliance will be uncomfortable for them. Good, Hayes said. Comfort breeds complacency. Complacency gets people killed. They stood in silence for a moment, watching another mixed patrol depart for the outer system. Human destroyers moved alongside Dominion cruisers, their formation already showing improved coordination compared to the Hive battle. Admiral Hayes, Ralvin said, when you invited me to Mars orbit for that demonstration, were you confident we would choose alliance over combat? Hayes smiled. Honestly, I gave it 60-40 odds, but I knew that even if you chose combat, we had already broadcast everything to your High Council. The political pressure would eventually force a ceasefire. You manipulated the political situation, Ralvin said. I used all available tools to achieve the objective, Hayes corrected. Military, political, diplomatic. That's another human lesson. War isn't just about fighting. It's about making the fight unnecessary. Ralvin's scales shifted color slightly, a Dominion expression of respect. I am beginning to understand why your species survived its own violence. 6 months after the Treaty of Mars, the alliance between humanity and the Dominion had transformed from desperate cooperation into genuine partnership. Joint patrols operated across both territories. Technology exchange teams worked around the clock. Human innovation met Dominion infrastructure in ways that benefited both civilizations. Rebecca Hayes stood in the command center of humanity's first joint military station, positioned at the border between human and Dominion space. The facility was massive, built with combined resources and designed by engineers from both species. It represented something new in galactic politics, not conquest, not subjugation, but actual partnership. Ralvin arrived for their regular strategic review. 6 months had changed him. He moved with less rigid formality, his interactions with human personnel showing genuine comfort rather than diplomatic politeness. "Admiral, the quarterly report shows encouraging progress," Ralvin said, displaying data across the holographic interface. "Combined fleet response times have improved 40%. Technology integration is ahead of schedule. The new kinetic plasma hybrid weapons are performing beyond projections." Hayes reviewed the data with satisfaction. "The hybrid weapons were a good idea. Your plasma delivery system combined with our kinetic acceleration technology. Neither of us could have developed that alone." "That is the value of this alliance," Ralvin agreed. "Not just adding our strengths, but creating new strengths that neither possessed individually." A communication alert interrupted them. Multiple sensor stations detected an anomaly near the Kepler system, 20 light-years from their current position. The readings were unusual, not Hive, not Nomad Raiders, something else. Hayes pulled up the full sensor data. "What are we looking at?" "Unknown vessel type," the sensor operator reported. "Energy signature doesn't match any known species in Dominion databases. It's just sitting there, not moving, not broadcasting." Ralvin studied the readings. Could be a derelict, could be a probe, could be a trap. "Only one way to find out," Hayes said. "I'll take a squadron to investigate, mixed human-Dominion ships." "I'm coming with you," Ralvin said. They assembled a small fleet, 3 human destroyers, 2 Dominion cruisers, and a cloud of combat drones. The force jumped to the Kepler system and approached the unknown vessel cautiously. It was like nothing either species had seen before. The ship was crystalline, reflecting light in impossible ways. It pulsed with energy that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. As they got closer, it began broadcasting. The message was mathematical, a series of equations that translated into basic greetings. The unknown vessel identified itself as an explorer from the collective, a civilization from beyond the galactic rim. They had detected the energy signatures from the battle with the Hive 6 months earlier and had come to investigate. Hayes opened a communication channel. "This is Admiral Rebecca Hayes of Humanity and Commander Ralvin of the Dominion Empire. We represent an alliance between our peoples." The response came in perfectly synthesized English and Dominion Standard Language. "Fascinating. An alliance between species at different technological development stages. This is unprecedented in our observations." "Your observations?" Ralvin asked. "The collective has been observing this galaxy for 3,000 years, the explorer explained. "We are scientists and philosophers, not conquerors. We study civilizations to understand how intelligence evolves. The alliance between humanity and the Dominion represents a new pattern." Hayes was skeptical. "Why should we believe you're peaceful? Every species claims peaceful intentions." "A reasonable concern," the explorer said. "We offer evidence. We have been observing your species, humanity, since you achieved nuclear capability. We have been observing the Dominion Empire since they unified their homeworld. We have never interfered, never made contact until now." "Why now?" Hayes asked. "Because you did something unique," the explorer said. "The Dominion Empire came to conquer humanity. Humanity demonstrated the capacity to resist. Instead of fighting to mutual destruction, you formed an alliance. In 3,000 years of observation, we have never seen that pattern. Usually, the stronger species conquers the weaker, or both destroy each other trying." Ralvin considered this. "What makes our alliance so unusual?" "The Dominion had overwhelming force but chose wisdom over victory," the explorer said. "Humanity had the capability to inflict massive casualties but chose preservation over pride. Both species made the statistically improbable choice to cooperate rather than compete. This suggests a level of strategic intelligence we rarely observe. Hayes and Ralvin exchanged glances. The explorer was confirming what they had both suspected. The alliance worked not because it was easy, but because both sides chose to make it work. "What happens now?" Hayes asked. "Now, we extend an invitation," the explorer said. "The collective maintains a network of allied civilizations across multiple galaxies, species that have demonstrated sufficient wisdom and capability. We would like to offer humanity and the Dominion entry into this network." "What does that entail?" Ralvin asked. "Access to collective knowledge, advanced technology, and coordination with other civilized species," the explorer explained. "In exchange, you contribute your own knowledge and assist with maintaining stability in your region of space. Think of it as your alliance, but scaled to a galactic level." Hayes was cautious. "We've been independent for a long time. We'd need assurances that this isn't just another form of subjugation." "Understood," the explorer said, "which is why we offer a trial period, 1 year of limited cooperation. Share what you're comfortable sharing. Learn what you wish to learn, and then decide if you want full membership." Hayes looked at Ralvin. They had worked together long enough to communicate without words. Both were thinking the same thing. This was an opportunity neither species could have achieved alone. "We accept the trial period," Hayes said, "but we maintain our sovereignty and our right to refuse full membership if terms don't suit us." "Agreed," the explorer said. "Welcome to galactic civilization, humanity, and dominion. You have passed a test you did not know you were taking." The explorer vessel began transmitting data packages. Star charts showing civilizations across multiple galaxies. Technology databases with advances neither humanity nor the Dominion had imagined. Diplomatic protocols for species with completely alien biologies and thought patterns. Ralvin watched the data flow and felt something he had not experienced in his long military career: genuine excitement about the future. "6 months ago, I came to conquer primitives. Now we're being invited to join ancient civilizations as equals." Hayes smiled. "That's what happens when you choose wisdom over violence, though I suspect we'll still need to be ready for violence. The galaxy is dangerous." "Agreed," Ralvin said. "But now we face that danger together, and apparently we're not alone anymore." They stood together in the command center, human and Dominion, watching as their combined civilization took its first steps into a much larger universe. The Galactic Empire had tested humanity, expecting submission. Humanity had laughed at the threat and offered partnership instead.